Well, we've made it to the end of the hockey season. There are only two teams left, being the Edmonton Oilers and Florida Panthers, who are playing in the Stanley Cup against each other for the second time in a row. And this time, I think we're going to have a little bit of a different matchup. There's definitely some things to talk about from the series last year and what has changed between the two teams. Let's talk about it. Before we get started, though, quick public service announcement. This is my friend Chuck, and he is sad because a very small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. It's breaking his heart and it's making him die. But if you subscribe right now, we will have Chuck the Happy Weasel instead, who will be much happier, live much longer, and is a huge, big-time Craziac. So as I alluded to in the intro, this is the second year in a row we've had Edmonton versus Florida in the Stanley Cup Finals. And last year's series was a bit of an interesting one in that Florida was in control for the majority of it, and people thought it was going to be a horrendously boring series after 3 games, and it went to 7 games. Edmonton clawed their way back and then lost in Game 7. But it was a good series, and I think this year's rendition should be better. I don't think we're going to get, a team up 3-0 in the series. You just don't see that happening. I think there's a smaller talent gap in this year's Stanley Cup final than there was last year. And last year's went 7 games, again, because Edmonton clawed their way back and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl willed their team back into this. So let's talk about last year's series before we get into this year's series. So Game 1 was a 3-0 Panthers shutout, kind of setting the mood for what was going to be the first 3 games of the series. Not all that great for Edmonton there. You would definitely like to see them score a goal, and they don't follow it up any better in Game 2, also in Florida, where they lose 4-1. Ouch. Not teams that go down 2-0 don't fare too well. Then on top of that, Game 3 is 4-3 Florida in Edmonton, which is starting to get, the people are getting the brooms out. People are thinking it's going to be a sweep. And then Edmonton comes in Game 4 and wins 8-1. 8-1. Now, I think that is a turning point, because if you win that game 4-3 or 3-2 or whatever, if you win by a small margin, there's no guarantee that you win the next game. But winning 8-1 means you figured something out. And Bobrovsky is a very hard playoff goalie to figure out. And Edmonton used that to win 5-3 in Game 5 and then 5-1 in Game 6. And all the momentum was in Edmonton's favor there. All of it. And you thought for sure Edmonton in Game 7 would come out guns a-blazing and take this series home in a reverse sweep. And Florida's drought of no Stanley Cup would continue. And then Florida won. I believe the score was 2-1. It was actually a low scoring game. Had to check my notes there. But yeah, low scoring game. Florida wins the series, winning their first Stanley Cup in franchise history and marking the 3rd Stanley Cup in 5 years for the state of Florida, which is odd because Florida is not a traditional hockey town / state. But yeah, Florida had a good team last year. I don't think they're as good this year. I think they lost a couple key pieces in Brandon Montour that have not been, Brandon Montour among others, that have not been replaced. But their core is still there. Edmonton, meanwhile, the question with Edmonton was never about their top-end scoring. It was always about their depth and their goaltending. And this year, Edmonton's depth is insane. It is much better. Jeff Skinner is currently a healthy scratch, or has been a healthy scratch. That is how deep this team is. And Stuart Skinner is having the most hot and cold, weird playoff run I've ever seen, where his games are either shutouts or 1-goal games where he puts up 29 saves, or he gets destroyed and they lose. So, the parity of him is ridiculous. You either get the best goalie in the playoffs or the worst goalie in the playoffs, all in the same person. It's like us Canes fans, what we call Pyotr Kochetkov on steroids. So, now I'm going to talk about what I believe to be true for this series. Weirdly enough, Edmonton's a much better home team, and Florida's a much better road team. So, I'm not sure home ice advantage really means a whole lot in this series to Edmonton, because Florida has won, I believe, all of their series on the road, because they beat Tampa in 5. They beat Toronto in Game 7. They beat us, Carolina, in Game 5 in Raleigh. So, I don't think home ice means a whole lot to Florida. Their fans really haven't gotten to see series wins on home ice. So games 1 and 2 being in Edmonton, games 3 and 4 being in Florida, game 5 being in Edmonton, 6 in Florida, 7 in Edmonton. It makes it a little tough to predict because it really does seem like anyone could win anywhere. Now, I do believe personally that, like I said earlier, the talent gap has shrunk massively. And I feel that Edmonton will be a lot stronger out the gate in this in this Stanley Cup playoff finals than they were last year. I am personally rooting for Edmonton because Florida has knocked my team out of the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years and has done it in either dramatic fashion or annoying fashion by headhunting, playing ruthless, and kind of being deliberately dirty while getting away with it because the officials don't call stuff in the Stanley Cup. But I digress. Now, it would be funny to watch, Edmonton fall apart and Canada, as a U.S. citizen, not have Canada win another Stanley Cup. But I'm at the point now where I am fully on the Edmonton bandwagon. I want to see McDavid and Draisaitl win a cup together, and I think that really bolsters their legacies and catapults McDavid into a top 10 at least, if not top 5 all-time talent-wise category. So my final prediction, and this is what you guys have been waiting for, I'm sure. Drum roll, please. I have the Edmonton Oilers winning in 7 games this year. I think this series will not be a reverse sweep almost as last year was. I think this series will probably be split 2-2 going into game 5, and I believe the home teams will win out from there on. I don't believe Florida is going to be able to manhandle Edmonton because of their speed, the way they were able to handle the Hurricanes. And I think Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, after last year's letdown in game 7, will wake up and lead their team to the promised land, giving Canada their first Stanley Cup since '93 and Edmonton their first Stanley Cup since the '80s. The last time Edmonton won a cup, Wayne Gretzky was playing for them. And now you've got the new generation's Wayne Gretzky playing for you now. And I believe Wayne Gretzky lost his first cup to the Islanders and then came back the next year and beat the Islanders to win his first cup. So the storyline almost writes itself. Go Oilers. And until next time, guys, stay crazy. Peace out.